I'll admit, I fully misjudged Bad Bunny because I'm a certified lover girl. I love jazz, I love bedroom pop, I love soft rhythms, and I love slight melodic tensions, but I'm not a big fan of boom basses. Somewhere between my mild disco phobia and my suspicion of these overplayed bass drops in sweaty clubs, I decided that Bad Bunny simply wasn't for me. I thought that soft girls don't survive reggaeton. But I was so wrong because somehow this global Latin superstar helped me understand how Latin rhythms can feel non predatory to women, from my toes to the fingertips on my piano. So if you too identify as a soft girl with mild disco drama, let me explain why Bad Bunny might be exactly your type of tempo. Hi there, and welcome to the Mugcast, a cozy listen to pair with your coffee. I'm Hannah, the writer behind Hugging a Mug on Medium, where I cover everything from music to psychology as a woman living abroad. Here, I read my stories aloud with a few reflections and insights along the way, so grab your mug, settle in, and let's get into today's piece. Today, I bring a new type of article, which is more of an introspective type of reading. I recently had the joy of watching Bad Bunny's halftime show, which I really hope no one missed because it was not just a celebration of culture, but it was a celebration of music, quite frankly. And I was so excited to finally understand him because I feel like I've been on his toes for a very long time. I've heard his music and everybody was so excited about his new tunes, and I admit I was confused because usually when things are very exciting and novel in music, and when people try to do something extraordinary that is not just disco music, I'm all in. But for some reason, I couldn't get Bad Bunny until I saw that halftime show and until I realized, wait, this man is hiding a lot of, not hiding actually, very openly playing a lot of very straightforward Latin beats that I love to play on the piano, for instance. I've been playing tumbaos on the piano for a long time, or I used to play a lot of them on the piano. And yes, it was hell to get them into my fingers, but I so enjoy them. And so watching the halftime show led me down this loophole of rediscovering what I love about Latin music as a foreigner, as somebody who just wants to find joy in this culture and who really loves Bad Bunny's messaging, frankly. I've always really been in favor of his messaging, even during the Grammys, for instance. But I'm afraid I was always kind of pushing him into that disco niche of music that's only being played in clubs. And as you will hear, I have a bit of a history with clubs. I don't really like clubbing, and on the rare occasions that I will do it, I find myself almost transported into like an outer world, like another body experience. So yeah, I really didn't think I could vibe with Bad Bunny until I saw that halftime show, and this article is dedicated to that. So as always, I will be reading one of my articles that I published already on Medium. If you're interested in reading along, you can click the link below and open the Medium article to read along with me. I also did some linking on there, so if there's any music or songs that I'm mentioning, those will be linked in the original article that I wrote. And yeah, I guess we'll just get started. The title of the article is Good Bunny Meets Bad Bunny, Finding My Heartbeat in a Half a Lifetime Show. And for this piece, be prepared for this to be a little more personal, a little more lyrical, a little more, I guess, taken from my history, or written as a soft girl, frankly, written as somebody who really cares about words, somebody who's sensitive to words and music. So here we go. I was born stiff-assed and scatterbrained, hearing stories of princesses and the soft kiss of true love. I knew mouths could lie, but not that hips were ever truthful. In my culture, hips don't move independently from the ribcage because stiffness is characterized as elegant and restraint is a virtue. In a similar vein, my music consisted of 3-4 counts in a box, and trotting in between the space of these counts was either sacrilegious, a mistake, or the work of a true master. I come from Austria, the home of classical music, where reanimations are done to the Radetzky March, and even blood transfusions seem to adhere to a 3/4 rhythm of black and white gowns drifting down shimmering hardwood floors in circles. Basically a waltz. Any offbeats were kind of a thrill to my young ears. It was novel, it was alerting, and it was awe-inspiring. So, at some point in my beginner piano career, I can't rationally explain why, I became a fan of jazz. That is where I met my friend, Charlie Parker. He was confined to my small book about boogie and my dreamy tales of jazz bars in New York, which were so far away from my little village in Austria. I knew these magical places to be filled with English and reflections on black lacquered pianos. I didn't think there were rolling R's involved or any acoustic guitars. But as any girl does, I grew. I learned, and my fingers learned to dance on the piano. And I never was an amazing pianist, but I certainly enjoyed it a lot. And my mind was filled with these like unintelligible arrangements and the notes that crowd the air of blues without asking for any permission. We label these musical moments, improvisations, when really, I think they should be called freedom. It seemed like seeing the stars for the first time when I realized melodies could be changed and abducted and neglected as a whole. It never appeared to me that the same joy lies between the counts of 2 and 3. And to any non-music nerds at this point, yes, this is a little bit more of a dreamy, maybe a little bit technical article, but I promise to you there's no overly technical wording. Even if you do 1 or 2 Google searches, you will be able to completely comprehend everything, but you don't even need to Google. I would invite you for this piece to just lean back and listen to how I describe music so you can get a feel for how I feel music and why I feel like Bad Bunny's music is so special and speaks to soft girls, actually, which I didn't expect. Jazz was bewildering to me, exotic, and somehow strangely beautiful, and so I developed a very skewed kind of relationship with Charlie. I didn't even speak English yet at this point, but I understood him and his friends, and weirdly, it felt like they understood me too. More than I've ever felt cared for by Bach, who tortured my brains and my hands as they came to chase across the dux and the commas with clumsy little fingers. It was as if I spoke the language of Charlie at heart, but not with my mouth. And that is what music does, to break down boundaries. It creates a connection where the circumstances of life have put boundaries. It introduces you to another person, heart first, not head first. The best way I can describe it is by using Bad Bunny's own words. The only thing stronger than hate is love. And music is lovely glue. I was about 12 when I met Charlie, and about 15 when I learned that girls walk on a faraway beach called Ipanema. This is a link to the girl from Ipanema, by the way. If you don't know that song, go look it up. It's beautiful. Though I was still scared of moving my hips due to societally prescribed shame, I realized that I liked humming this music. I liked playing it, and I really liked feeling it. Maybe as I chewed on Mozart's golden chocolate bowls, yes, we have those in Austria, I should have realized I needed to escape the polkas and learn to dance, maybe salsa. In the world that I hope to live in one day, it is necessary and beautiful to shed confining rhythms and learn what really lies between the lines on one's music sheets, where my heart was cold and my pen couldn't write. Because I think the space is the root of connection with people whose language I don't yet speak, but whose voice I want to hear. The end of hate and the beginning of peace lies in wanting to understand one another in every single offbeat. Now, here's the difference between Roman Latin and Radiant Latina. I went to a white school, a Catholic private institution in a homogeneous abbey in the rolling hills of Austria, where each week I was taught to translate ancient Latin for 3 hours. Every week. My music classes were filled with Mozart and Beethoven and maybe the occasional mention of an Elvis Presley, introduced in the 10-page section in my music book pretentiously labeled modern music. Because I learned that Elvis the pelvis was not a compliment. Charlie Parker was not on these pages in my music book, yet I vividly remember a picture of Louis Armstrong, trumpet in hand. Above it was a single paragraph that read, quote unquote, "Jazz is the music that originates from black slavery in the USA around the turn of the century." That's about as much context as an Austrian gets for this music, if you're being introduced to music as a whole. The next paragraph introduced dodecaphonie. I don't actually know how to pronounce that word in English. Minimal music. And multi-page rundowns of the life of Arnold Schoenberg. Not to say that Arnold Schoenberg's music is bad inherently, but Charlie Parker had jokes and smiles and quirks and turns that left me guessing. Arnold felt more like a math puzzle, almost like a headache to me, whereas jazz was true and a warm-hearted feeling. There was no mention of Latin music along those lines. If anything, I would have thought they were talking about Gregorian chant, which is a type of very old medieval singing technique, I guess you can call it. I'm not sure Bad Bunny's a huge fan of monophonic male choirs, though he might kind of like the ropes, I guess, maybe. And then my piano teacher, an ingenious man, one day taught me to play my first ever bossa nova groove. I remember being introduced to Blue Bossa, Autumn Leaves, and The Girl from Ipanema in rapid succession. All three I recommend you to listen to, because I had put in such effort into squeezing this unfamiliar beat into my brain and fingers. My piano teacher must have thought to leverage the potential while it was still there. Because I have to say it felt different on my infantile hands. Where Charlie Parker jumped and chuckled, the bossa nova groove slowly strode across, with a slowly dropping sunset on the horizon, all of it unfolding at my fingertips. Charlie danced through the alleys of New York and New Orleans, but the bossa nova groove gracefully left footprints in the sand with softly swaying hips. And then I found my first true love, the offbeat between the count of 2 and 3. I thought at the time I was in love with a new sort of jazz, but now I know I discovered a fascination that has since caught me in waves. Every time I have the joy of tumbling face first into a new musical genre I have thus far naively left untapped, I learn to feel a new country. And now I've come to understand that what people call music theory is my way of learning culture as a whole. Some sample new societal constructs through food, others like to learn culture through language or through adventures. I awe over old stones and vibrations in the air. And as the keys on my at-home pianos are growing a little bit dusty during my travels, I need the company of melodies more than ever before, in a place so far from my home. Because currently I'm living in Taiwan, for those curious. To hear doesn't mean to listen. Latin music, for the most part, seemed to be one of those musical languages I wouldn't learn to speak. It felt sexy, full of lust, and exuding that self-respect that demands attention upon entering a room. It had the curves that I lacked, the long, lush curls that I lacked, the rolling R's that I could fake but never really feel, and it demanded a command over my own body that I don't think is encoded in my genes. And I realize I'm quite late to the party, especially as someone who engages with music a lot. But I have a trauma around party music. I have zero body awareness. And if I hear a Latin beat, I'm reminded of every moment that I lost control of my body over alcohol and basses. As a woman, not all of those memories ended particularly well. Thankfully, my much cooler friends introduced me to Rosalia first. And I fell into her album looks the way Alice fell into discovering Wonderland. My ears opened, my eyes saw colors in the black and white coats of -5 degrees Celsius in the streets of Seoul, where I was sitting as I was listening to the album. And when listening to many of her interviews, I realized that I was utterly fascinated with the stories she told in her music, the attention to detail, and the culture in her rhythms. The same group of really cool friends also recommended me to listen to Bad Bunny, but if someone is introduced as a rapper to me, I usually resign quickly, even though I've learned to face my fear because I really, really love Doechii. I fled to Asia because even in Austria, I honestly feel a bit too stiff for the type that comes with alcohol, and clubs are personally a hell experience for me. Yes, I get the intoxicating fun of it, sure, but I feel like a mouse in a leopard print feigning my own coolness. So I taste tested a few minutes of De Tira Más Fotos in my headphones, which is Bad Bunny's newest album, but only heard thumping computer beats. I didn't get it because I wasn't truly open enough yet, and I will admit that was my mistake. And then just a few hours ago, or a few days ago at this point, I watched the 2026 Super Bowl halftime show. And I watched it particularly because I knew it was quite talked about, and I was so interested in actually learning about Puerto Rican culture through that 15-minute show. I liked Bad Bunny in his interviews and reviews, but I didn't count myself among his followership because I like highlighting women, and I had this nagging internalized misogyny against women with little clothing doing incredibly sexy dances, probably because I was envious, let's face it. And I had learned that Bad Bunny's lyrics were less misogynistic than maybe some of the Latin songs I had been familiarized with before, but I still felt like I couldn't really resonate with what the beats were saying to me. Not the words, but the beats mainly. And the halftime show featured a lot of just that, a bunch of women shaking their asses in a way that I found my inner critic attacking with exposed fangs. My automatic thoughts jumped to conclusions of sexism, and only my rational thinking slowed these thoughts by remembering, and this is important, a woman can wear and do whatever a woman wants to do. So who the fuck am I to judge these girls who are so well in control of their bodies, so able to transport messages through their hips, something I frankly can't do? Who am I to pass my judgment on them? They can dance at the halftime show however the fuck they want to. Who am I to judge? And as soon as that sunk in, my own predispositions and how wrong I was, I kind of opened my ears. And honestly, surely there was a mix of envy as I watched these women move so beautifully, so erotically, and so freely in a way that I felt alienated me from my own body. And it was not their mistake, it was my inability that had caused this initial automatic thought. But I allowed the critic, and I observed the entire show closely because at the very beginning, as familiar trumpet sounded, my ears had caught a nostalgic thread, a sound or a rhythm I was familiar with that suddenly I seemed deeply cold to. A montuno. If you don't know what a montuno is, you can basically have a listen if you simply Google it. But it's something that I learned to play on the piano when I was younger. And I fell in love with this rhythm. I absolutely loved just sitting at the piano, basically magnetized to the keys with this, what is a very complex rhythm for my white head. For my fingers to perform that was not like, again, my body's not made with the intention of moving my ass or my fingers in those rhythms, but I love it when I can. And yeah, I was just magnetized to the piano not because I was so good at playing it, but because it felt so invigorating, so alive. I can't even, I think the words I put through for it in the article are actually better. So let's continue. Learning to see with the ear and the heart. The reason I didn't relate to Latin music was far more complex than I'd anticipated. It was a mix of internalized misogyny, embedded stereotypes towards the Latin soul and how I was not a Latin soul. Mainly, it had to do with me not seeing myself as somebody who was capable of feeling that rhythm, even though I had felt it before, but like, yeah. And I also had a puzzling need to maintain boundaries on my mental refuge that I had found in jazz, which is so fucked, I know. But turns out I was just keeping on being introduced to the wrong sound of Latin. But as always in life, once you face the question with a genuine interest and a thirst to actually know and understand, the answers will find you. I learned that I have an almost instant rash-like reaction in my brain to the dembow beat, which is a looped rhythm used in clubs a lot. And it's often present in the deep, computer-generated thump that you hear in clubs. There is nothing inherently wrong with it, I will say, but hear me out. I have trauma around clubs. I have a physically painful reaction to loud, immediate music, and especially this like thumping sound. It really hurts my ears, and I even went to clubs with earplugs in because I wanted to learn to enjoy it, but I really have pain around it. Women also sometimes experience horrible things amongst intoxicating repetitive rhythms, and in all honesty, those songs unfortunately often used to be dripping with sexist narratives that felt alienating and a little bit dangerous to me, at least in the past. I remember loving Despacito in 2019, though that is also a very erotic song in all honesty. And after that, I just dreaded Latin music on my rare forced visit to the club because it seemed like all the dumpa da dumpa, even from afar, caused me to break out in rashes because I knew I couldn't move to it. It was feeling a little bit predatory, and I just wasn't made for the environment. I still am not made for the environment, and I'm not saying that I will suddenly go to a lot of clubs because I discovered Bad Bunny. Actually, no. I just listen to Bad Bunny in my bedroom, and I dance. Guys, I dance, which I don't dance in my regular life. This is different. This has done something weird, but funny. Yeah, but despite that, I felt the aliveness in a way that Latin people like to describe it while dancing. But I didn't feel it in a club, as mentioned. I felt it when I played Cuban tumbao bass lines for the first time and got stuck on it because it was so hard to get it into my brain in the first place. I had to keep them in a loop because otherwise I felt like I was going to fall off a driving train at full speed. And I did fall off multiple times, head first, don't worry. However, somehow I got it at some point, and my fingers danced in a livelihood that demanded attention, not intoxication, when I learned to play a montuno. The cherry on top was that I realized one of my favorite TV shows, Sex and the City, actually features a montuno-inspired intro, which is pretty cool. If you're on the article right now, if you click the link to the article below, you have a link to the intro to Sex and the City, so you can hear that for yourself. Latin music for me is one of those things that flowed along my life for a long time like a stream that I kept hearing somewhere nearby, but I never found it. Until that halftime show, when I realized that I'm actually in love with this idea so much, especially the idea of music that is not in English. Sounds that transcend a single culture's narrative. People who are joined in love, not hate, with music being the glue and fuel to their spirits. But maybe Latin countries were just a bit too far from Austria, where I used to live, and Taiwan, where I live now, for me to quickly understand it. Or maybe it was just that some things are supposed to come to your life at a certain time. I watched the Grammys with a smile for Bad Bunny, knowing it was deserved that he won them, though I only understood his messaging for immigrants at the time, and I applauded him for it. I loved his advocacy and his activism, but I didn't yet get the music. Somehow the halftime show was the first time that I felt compelled to ask myself the question, what do I not like about this music? Why do I not like this when everybody else does? Now we're getting into connecting the dots is always easier in review. I've loved watching Latin ballroom dances since my childhood. We have a kind of Dancing with the Stars in Austria that is super famous, and my family would put on this whole like Friday night show, and I would wear a cute little dress, usually a dress up, and I'd pretend that I actually could dance, which again, I wasn't born with those kinds of qualities. I adored the way that montunos flowed from my piano as I learned them in an endless loop that had yet enough unanticipated change and versatility to keep me on my toes, or fingertips, I guess. And it triggered the most beautiful flow state as in me as a pianist, not as a good pianist, but even as an amateur one. I felt the life, the liveliness in the notes and the rhythms. And it was a feeling of the world just disappearing. And the music was inside my body. I felt my brain fizz with electricity when I forced my 10 mobile musicians to synchronize the tumbao bass line in the left and in the right hand melody. It was this fizz in my brain that I recognized again and again throughout Bad Bunny's performance at the halftime show. So I looked for the right words and described my problem. I learned about reggaeton. I am working on my pronunciation in Spanish, guys. Discovered the meaning of tresillo and tembao and how those were all part of, but definitely not all of Latin music. And I think that is one of the main problems. Like, we always characterize the Latin music as that club music, but that's a continent, people, with a bunch of countries. And I, as a European, shouldn't have been that blind. I was aware that they had different rhythms, and I was aware of the difference between like a bossa nova and a tumbao and a montuno, but I didn't have the ability to see it in other people's music. I could play it for myself, but I didn't have the ability to see it in or recognize it when I heard it in Bad Bunny's album until that halftime show. And honestly, I still can't tell you what was the difference. I was just ready. Yeah. I just liked a different kind of Latin, which was very present in Bad Bunny's new album that was not yet what most clubs focus on squeezing through their boxes, at least in Austria. Suddenly, when I listened to this album again with this new information and zoomed my ears into those instruments and those familiar beats, it all made sense to me. I've since come to learn that I love the feel of organic syncopation, specifically my keyword, over stomp-like computer beats, and that was the simple key hidden in music theory that tells tales about who I am as a person, what I like in music, and what I think is musical ingenuity, what I can feel inside me. I love organic syncopation for me to be able to feel something inside me. For me to feel the music, I want it to feel organic. I want it to feel natural and alive. And I can't really deal with that boom, boom, boom beat because it dysregulates my nervous system. Maybe that's a bit too far, but like it makes me a bit scared because I am used to that hurting my ears. So when it's more like the way Bad Bunny does it in his album, I feel more engaged with the music. I feel the liveliness. I can dance along to it. I can move to it. I suddenly move, guys. I move. Surprise. But yeah, organic syncopation, guys, is what you want to look for if you're a soft girl and you feel like you don't understand Latin music, or you don't want Latin music, or for some reason people love it but you don't. Maybe you want to check out songs that feature organic syncopation. You're welcome. Finding this word was one of those heureka moments, not just a small aha moment. And then I started compiling more of these songs and this sound into a playlist, and I called it Latin for Soft Girls. Because really, that is what it feels like for me, Latin for soft girls. And if you're reading along in the article at this point, you will find that I've actually linked this playlist. So if you've gotten this far and you're like, wait, maybe I do like Latin, maybe she just dropped the right keywords into my lap for me to understand and like this. Or maybe you've loved Bad Bunny the whole time, then you're much cleverer than me. You're welcome. You're a genius. I give it to you. The award, the trophy goes to you. You've been way cleverer than me for a very, very long time. If you knew all these keywords in advance, please speak to me in the comments. Illuminate me. Teach me something that I don't know, because clearly there's so much I don't know. And I'm just so excited to share knowledge that I gain or some insights that I gain. But so many people out there study these things, are much more clever about this. And I'm not Latin. I love to learn from Latin people. I just have, unfortunately, nobody who's Latin in my surroundings. So if you're a Latin person, you're listening to this and you're like, holy shit, she has no idea how far this thing goes, please give me information in the comments. I am begging you. I just stood in my mini room in the south of Taiwan for an hour trying to understand how to move my hips to a samba basic groove. Mind you, I've learned a little bit of ballroom dance before, but it was very, very short. And it was only partner dance. So this is the first time that I'm like required to move my own body by myself, and made me try to understand how I can move my rib cage independent from my hips. That's very difficult for me. So like, again, any tips, any new keywords, any learnings from Latin music, I'd be so happy to have in the comments, because yeah, I want to learn. This is fascinating. Okay. And as I learned the names, listened to the music, and uncovered the meaning behind these melodies, I eventually realized this is just another reflection of me. I'm not Latin, but I see myself in Latin music. I see what it does to my body. I finally feel what Latin people describe, and it's so beautiful. It's so fundamentally beautiful. The familiar feeling that it leaves on my neural network, that kind of fizziness that I was talking about, the need to move, and softly, not always exclusively erotically, because I'm not good at that. It was all the things that I loved from the start. And Love from the Start is, by the way, a little nudge to one of the songs that is in my soft Latin for Soft Girls playlist. Again, Latin for Soft Girls playlist is linked in the article that I linked below. If you want to listen to a lot of the songs that I right now have on repeat. And From the Start is a song by Leve, and it's actually also Latin inspired. It leaves me with a smile of understanding that, as always and ever, music needs no translations. It beats, like our hearts. And possibly in Latin music, this thumbing is clearer and more creative than in many other cultural musical expressions I've had the pleasure of experiencing so far. But that is why I thought, though I'm not a Latina, I can look at the dance and I can hear the singing, and I can think to myself that I both admire and feel understood within this music. Music is the language of the heart, and today made that clearer to me than ever. Maybe, just maybe, that is why we need what we need in a world filled with hate and exclusivism at the dawn of a societal hierarchy that aches to break. Music, in a language you just don't speak, but that you can feel. But knowing that someone can speak that language, realizing that someone puts words in between the notes to allow us to understand their language completely without a translator, maybe that's what we need. And if you want to read me trying to apologize for my shit Spanish and trying to apologize for the fact that I can't write this article in Spanish because my 2 years of Spanish are very far in the back of my mind because I'm so focused on learning Chinese, you can jump to the article and there will be a little piece at the bottom which explains that I'm trying to learn Spanish, but I'm shit at it, and like, give me a few more years and I'm gonna try to be better. Which, guys, that's what life is about. Learning. It's about trying to be better every day a little bit, and I love how this article helped me uncover keywords. It made me learn, it made me discover music, it made me understand people. It made me appreciate, the halftime show especially made me appreciate Puerto Rican culture in a way I'd never seen before. I am so grateful for this performance. I'm so grateful for all the love and work that went into it. And I'm so excited to see what's there to come. Thanks for granting me access to your ears here on the Mugcast. You can read more of my writing on Medium on Hannah's Cafe or Hug in a Mug, or follow me on Instagram at hugin.amug for cozy content and updates. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow the podcast, share it with a fellow coffee lover, and let me know in the comments which article I should read next. I hope you had a nice cappuccino with this episode, and I'm sending a warm hug from my mug to yours. Hope to see you soon, somewhere on Hannah's Cafe. Bye bye!